All right, good morning, everybody. It is Jay again, and today we are going to be discussing growing fruit trees in containers. Stay tuned. All right, so this is a question I get asked quite often is, can you grow fruit trees in containers? What if I don't have a bunch of land to plant things on? Or what if I'm just not ready? I haven't chosen my forever home yet. Or what if I just want to grow a whole bunch of little potted trees in my yard in areas where I can't plant things, where there's hardscaping? You know, you can always put some nice planters in some areas to cool areas that you can't actually put a fruit tree in the ground because you've got something there. In this case, it's concrete right up against the house, but I still wanted some nice green up against the house. So we use these corrugated drain pipes here, and we cut them into to make giant planters for the fruit trees to sit in right up here against the house. Okay, so can you put fruit trees in containers? Well, absolutely. I mean, that's what most nurseries are. I think more the question is how long can they be in those containers, and will they even fruit in those containers? And the answer to that is, of course, yes, things will fruit in containers. What ends up happening is you got to think about a pot like an aquarium, and the tree is only going to grow to the size of the aquarium, okay? And then it's going to stop growing, and then they get bored, so they don't have much to do. Once they sort of fill the pot in with their roots, they don't have much to do, and they're not going to grow anymore depending on the size of the actual pot. You're going to get a certain size, and then all they're going to do is start to put on fruit real heavy, like you see over here on this lemon. And you can also get really, really full-size fruits. So it's not like they're going to be very dwarf small fruits being in containers. You just have to let the tree hit the optimum size in that particular container. And you see that you can keep a really big tree like this Oro Blanco here. It's about 8 foot tall here. You can still see that this is existing just fine in a 15-gallon container. So what they do is they're going to grow to the size that their roots allow them to in that container. And that's usually what they do first, is they'll grow to that size. And then once they hit a certain size, limited by the size of the pot and the roots, well, then they'll just start pumping on heavy fruit like this Oro Blanco is currently doing. You can see it's got some nice fruit forming here, okay? So now what it's going to do is it's going to spend the rest of the year ripening those fruits up, and you might not get a lot of growth out of this because when they're in a container, they're really limited on what they can do as far as either growing or flowering or fruiting, because you guys have to remember that these plants go through these little hormonal changes, and when they're doing that thing, that's what they're doing. So if they're growing, they're growing. If they're flowering, they're flowering. They're fruiting, they're fruiting. There's not a lot of trees that kind of do both things at once. There are a few exceptions to that. You know, pears being one of them. Pears can put on lots and lots of fruit while they're growing at the same time. So that's why pear trees in particular are a really good tree for here. They don't really slow down even if you have fruit on them, okay? So if you want the tree to continue to grow, you're going to have to keep up stepping the size of the pot. So you have to grow it to its maximum size in each pot before you transfer it to the next pot. You wouldn't want to take a 5-gallon pot like this little tree and plant it in this big pot where this mulberry's in and expect it to do good. The best way to handle this situation is to go from a 5-gallon, grow the tree to its maximum size in a 5-gallon, then put it into a 15-gallon, okay? Then it can grow a little bit bigger. It can start to get a few branches, like you see on this mulberry here. Okay, then you'll transfer it, once it's hit its maximum size there, you'll transfer it to a 25. And then it can get even bigger. You can see this one here is now above me, quite a bit above me. Right? So even mulberries you can grow in containers. I'll show you an even bigger one here. So this is going to be the next size up for this tree that I'm going to show you here in a minute. This is a 45-gallon pot, And this is not going to accept a very small tree like these little figs here. This is going to get this larger mulberry tree that has definitely hit its size in the 25-gallon. And it's actually quite a larger tree here, okay? So this is a 25-gallon. You see I've got some rocks in here to kind of hold him upright because, like I said, he's hit the size that he needs to be here. So this one, you can see he goes way up. That's at least 12 feet, 12 to 13 feet. So the next step I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to transfer this one from a 25 into the 45-gallon that I just showed you. And then it will have more root room, and then this tree can get even bigger than it is. And this is, I grow a lot of sacrificial trees, meaning I've got a lot of trees that are in pots that are just sitting out here shading other trees so they can get established, like this mango tree right here. You see he's got all his little fruit on it here, but he's going to burn soon because the branches are starting to bend down. So having a potted tree right next to it really is going to help shield that tree, especially when summer is coming on. Okay, and there are certain trees that like pots better than others, and it's going to be more, let's call it bush type plants that are going to have more bush type roots. They're going to have a lot of roots in the container instead of just 1 or 2 or 3 larger roots, right? So there are some trees that are happier grown in containers than others, you know, fig being one of the better ones, citrus being one of the better ones for pots. Guavas, they're more of a bush. They do really well in pots. Pomegranates, they're a bush. They do really well in pots. You know, what doesn't care really for pots? Well, mulberries, I mean, that's not their favorite because they've got really large roots that need to spread out into the ground in order to absorb nutrients. So, of course, they like to be in a much larger pot, or maybe even like to be in the ground, okay? So what happens to these trees when they kind of hit their maximum size in each pot is it's basically like a fish in an aquarium that has hit its maximum size, okay? So they'll just kind of stop growing after a certain point. You'll notice that they all kind of stay about the same size, and then they'll all start fruiting. Now, the second you do something different with that tree, you're going to get some odd behavior or some different behavior. Let me give you an example. So you've got a fig tree here, right? And it's planted in a pot. It's hit its maximum size, so all it really has to do now is put on fruit, put on a bunch of figs. Okay? So once it hits that, they kind of hit that size, well, then they're just going to put on figs. Like I said, you'll see these real soon here starting to kind of put on their main crop. They'll put on a whole bunch of figs, right? Nice, big, juicy figs. Now, the second you do something different with that, meaning you either up pot that into a larger container, or you up pot it into the world's largest container, which is the ground, it's going to change the behavior in the fact that you might not see this fruit now for, like, say 2 or 3 more years. And you're like, man, what's going on? I got this thing and it was fruiting, you know, it had fruit on it. It was kind of fruiting size, and now it's not fruiting. Well, it's because you planted it now, and they would rather focus on roots in which to keep themselves alive instead of fruits in which they need to reproduce because they think they're either going to die soon or they're running out of room in the pot. So they just need to reproduce, okay? That happens often, right? So something like a mango, right? You buy a big mango tree and you expect, you know, to have the fruit. You see how it's flowering and fruiting? Well, if I leave it in this pot, it'll continue to flower and fruit, right? But now the second I plant this thing, it's going to want to focus on the roots instead. So I might as well just go ahead and break these flowers off because I know that the tree cannot do both things at once. It's going to prefer to root over doing this fruit. And really the way to save these mangoes is to take off these flowers once you plant these. And what'll happen is it'll just push on all new growth. So you can see here where the flowers get broken, they push on a whole nother set of growth, right? Right here. beautiful new growth coming off that, right? So you pick and choose, like, would you rather have the flowers and the fruit, or would you rather have the tree alive? Well, I'd rather have the tree alive. So I would rather than push new growth like this, than push flowers until you start to put them in the ground and they start to get bigger. Okay, this is a larger tree, longer term fruit. It's not quite so much of an instant gratification type tree as, say, a citrus tree, which is going to be just covered in fruit, even in a potted condition. Okay. So can you grow fruit trees in pots? Absolutely you can. I'll just kind of walk through here real quick and show you some examples of these. Make this video a little shorter. So mulberries for sure. Peaches. Peaches do really well in pots. Figs. Figs do excellent in pots. Mulberries. Apricots. Apriums. Peaches. So as long as you got this new growth on them, you know you're good to go. And see, the pots are all down in here where it's shaded, and then the trees are all up here in the sun. So the trees are all protecting the pots. So do the pots overheat? Well, no. Could they? Well, sure, if the sun is hitting the side of a pot. But if you can kind of keep that in an area where it's a little bit cooler, then absolutely you can grow fruit trees in containers. Citrus, pears. I mean, look how big they get. Nice trees. That's at least 10 foot, if not 12 foot, and covered in fruit. Absolutely covered in pears. You see these guys. Mulberries, and of course tropicals do really well in pots because they prefer that potting mix type soil over our ground, right? Anything you want though. Barbados cherries, pomegranates, Suriname cherries. You just have to give it a big enough pot in order to get big enough to provide as much fruit as you're wanting off that tree, because obviously in the ground, like this one back here, they're going to get a lot bigger and provide more fruit. But can you grow fruit trees in containers? Absolutely you can. What do you think every nursery is, basically? It's just knowing what pot size to use and what fruit tree to put in that pot. All right, guys, that's it for today. Real short one here on growing fruit trees in containers. Absolutely you can. Please leave me a like and a thumbs up to this video. I'm trying to get a lot more of these videos done for beginners. All right, guys, thank you for watching.